On prosocial behavior, altruism, it's an unselfish interest and voluntary effort in helping another person. Learning to share, that's an important aspect of prosocial behavior. Research indicates that sharing is initially done for non-empathetic reasons, so maybe social play, imitation, like if you see other kids sharing, then maybe you'll share too. But you're not thinking to yourself, I'm going to be nice and share with another kid. But by about 4 years of age, empathetic awareness and adult encouragement produce a sense of obligation in the child to be more empathetic and to share. What is important developmentally is that the child sees sharing as an obligation that they need to fulfill, and it's part of the social relationships that they have with other people, and it also involves questions of right and wrong, and so they need to think about that. By the start of elementary school, children begin to express more complicated notions of what is fair. So some examples. Equality means everybody's treated the same. Merit, this means that you reward hard work, skillful performance, or good behaviors. And then benevolence means that giving special consideration to those that are disadvantaged in some way. So prosocial behavior occurs more often, obviously, in adolescence than in childhood, because obviously the adolescents are more cognitively, socially aware. And this probably is not a surprise to a lot of people. Females view themselves as more prosocial and empathetic and engage in more prosocial behavior than males. Some researchers have suggested there are 6 types of prosocial behavior that young adolescents will do in this is at least in Mexican American and European American families. They are altruism, public, you're doing it when other people can see it, emotional, dire, meaning that the circumstances are really important and you really need to help somebody like right then, anonymous, like anonymous donations, and then compliant. Related to this, though, are 2 other aspects of prosocial behavior, and they are forgiveness and gratitude. Forgiveness, this is an aspect of prosocial behavior occurring when an injured person releases the injurer from possible behavioral retaliation. You forgive them. Gratitude is a feeling of thankfulness and appreciation in response to kindness or helpfulness. And gratitude is linked to a number of positive outcomes for adolescents, including fewer depressive symptoms. I listen to a lot of podcasts, some on psychology, some just on, being a better person, things of this nature. And gratitude is something that a lot of those podcasts will refer to. And I've even seen entire podcasts that are just on the idea of gratitude. So there's apparently a lot of positive psychological benefits for gratitude, doing it like a gratitude practice every day. So it might be something you look into if you're interested in that. On antisocial behavior, the opposite. So conduct disorder is one of the first things they talk about. This is age-inappropriate actions and attitudes that violate family expectations, society's norms, and the personal or property rights of others. Children that have conduct disorders will have a wide range of rule-violating behaviors such as swearing, temper tantrums, vandalism, theft, and even assault. About 5% show serious conduct problems, and these are best explained by a whole bunch of different risk factors coming together over time. So it's going to be, problematic genes, possibly bad parenting, bad neighborhood, bad schools. If you have all those things that come together, it can create a recipe for things like conduct disorders. And we talked way early in the semester the idea of free will, and I've talked several times about the idea of getting on different paths. But if you already have bad genes, and then you have bad parents, and then you're in a bad neighborhood, and then you have bad schools, it's like you've been pushed over to this path over here, and it's really hard for you to get back over, if you need to be over here. With juvenile delinquency, it's a great variety of behaviors, ranging from unacceptable to even just breaking the law. They have 2 kinds they talk about here: index offenses and status offenses. Index offenses are actual straight-up criminal acts, such as robbery, homicide, and this is going to be whether it's committed by juveniles or adults. Status offenses, these are juvenile offenses that are usually not as serious as index offenses. It may be things like underage drinking, truancy, things of this nature. They talk a little bit about, so there's an issue, obviously, with juvenile justice, whether an adolescent who commits a crime should be treated as an adult. Juvenile court delinquency caseloads have decreased, but those numbers don't include those that were not arrested or not assigned to caseloads, or those especially that committed crimes but were not caught. And so there is a chart for this. Court delinquency caseloads from 1960 to 2016, as you can see, time when I was an adolescent, definitely peaked. I can see that. And then it has definitely been going down the last few years. And that's something you might think about. It's like, why is this happening? Why is court delinquency caseloads going down so much? It could be people are not committed, or people are committing offenses, not getting caught, things of this nature. But there might be some other underlying reasons that you might think about. Maybe we'll have a discussion question about it. Probably are already aware, males are more likely to engage in delinquency than females. So theft, property damage, physical aggression, they're more for males than for females. And this is going to peak at about 18 years of age. The peak for violence is 18 to 19 for males. And then for females, it's 19 to 21. I'm not sure why that is, but that's an interesting tidbit. Early onset antisocial behavior before the age of 11 is associated with more negative developmental outcomes than late onset, which would be after 11. So if you start basically acting up at 11, there's definitely a chance, or before, there's definitely a chance you're going to carry that, all the way through adolescence and into adulthood. There are some predictors of juvenile delinquency. The first one is conflict with authority. The second one is minor, like secretive acts or minor aggressions. The third one is a negative sense of self, poor self-control, and more self-centered cognitions. Another predictor, starting younger, we just talked about. Being male is one of two. Having low expectations for education and poor school performance in the earlier grades is another predictor. Obviously, having delinquent peers and older siblings that are delinquents could definitely lead you down that path. Being from a lower SES family could lead to delinquency, and we've talked about this before, the idea of how important SES is. Bad parenting. So if you're exposed to harsh, ineffective, and unengaged parenting, definitely could lead to delinquency. And then living in a high crime neighborhood also can lead to delinquency. You see it in your surroundings, and so it's something you do too. Modeling, we've talked about a lot too. Something that's really important to try to curb delinquency is engaged parenting. What they call it, parental monitoring, where you're like trying to check up on your kid. Where are they at? Not necessarily in an overbearing way, but it's just like, where are you going tonight? That should be a question you should be able to ask your kid, and your kid should be able to give you a response. If you're like, where are you going tonight? Kid's like, none of your business, or whatever they would say, or they lie to you. That's not going to be good parental monitoring. Kind of a side note, you can go too far with that. I know a lot of people use like tracking apps with their kids and their phones. Even once the kids have gone to college, the kids are still, or the parents are still tracking them. I don't know about that. Anyways. I understand the desire to want to do that as a parent, to keep your kids safe and whatnot. But, at a certain point, once you're in your 20s, maybe your parents shouldn't be tracking you. Anyways, that's my opinion. And then also, if you do start to run into problems, family therapy can be effective in reducing delinquency. There's also, to finish up this chapter, a short little area on religion and spiritual development. Religion, an organized set of beliefs, principles, rituals, symbols that increase an individual's connection to a sacred or transcendent other. Religiousness is going to be the degree of affiliation with an organized religion, and participation in their rituals and their practices, connection with those beliefs, and involvement in the community with other believers. And then spirituality is experiencing something beyond oneself in a transcendent manner and living in a way that benefits others and society. So there's definitely some differences between religiousness, spirituality. You could be, spiritual, but not necessarily religious. As far as development goes, society uses many methods of religious socialization to ensure people will carry on that religious tradition. And children are usually going to adopt the religious beliefs of their parents. So their parents' religiousness is very positively correlated to the adolescent's own religiousness, which in turn is going to be linked to their religiousness into adulthood. So if your parents are super involved in the church, you go to church every Sunday, maybe Wednesday nights, you go with them every week, that's probably something you're going to carry into adulthood. If your parents don't go to church, don't care about church, that's probably something you're going to take into adulthood as well. Not to say it's necessarily going to be that way. Some people, rebel against their parents' religion, or some people, their parents don't have a religion. As they get older, they're like, I wish we had been more involved in a church, and then you get involved in a church. But overall, there's a pretty strong correlation between you and your parents' religiousness. Okay, so developmental changes in religiousness. This is from ages 14 to 25. You can see it starts to kind of go down. And so this is from 0 to 32. It's at about 16 at 14. And then by 25, you're down about 13. Not only does it go down kind of by age, but it's also just decreasing in general. So millennials are less religious than the previous generations. And then also part of this development is part of your search for identity. Adolescents and emerging adults, they begin to grapple with pretty sophisticated questions like, why am I here on this planet? And for people that turn to religion, researchers have found that there are various aspects of religion that are linked with positive outcomes. So it's possible that religion can play a role in an adolescent's health and well-being. So something to think about. It says religion, but I think that there's probably a case to be made too for that. Again, there's a difference between the religiousness and the spirituality. So there could be a case if you're like, I'm not interested in religion. Maybe if you're interested in spirituality, that's something that could increase you or, the kids that you're working with or the kids that you have, their own health and well-being. So at least something to think about. Look at the research and see if you disagree or agree. All right. That is it for this chapter. Thank you very much for listening.